Hello, everybody. I'm Axelsims, and this is secondary character who's not talking. Don't know why. Say something, damn you.
Something, damn you.
Something, damn you. Go. Anyway, so, we're back again, and we are reading the second chapter of Xenophilia! Yay! She's not happy about it, though.
I didn't say I wasn't happy about it. I'm just...
Being quiet for no reason.
Yes. Bring me my water, slave.
Start reading, slave.
So, you're a slave to a slave who's a slave to
Me?
fashion?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, that makes sense.
This makes total sense.
Okay.
Understanding, Chapter 2 of Xenophilia.
Oh, I understand it perfectly.
Why don't you actually read it, silly?
Yeah, I'm procrastinating what I do best.
I know you are. Now stop.
That's what I do best.
Stop it.
Stop what?
Read it.
They wound up sneaking in the front door of Lyra's small house at the edge of the village as the sun went down. They spent the entire afternoon avoiding the rest of Ponyville's population, ducking from one isolated spot to another and laughing like fools when some pony came to investigate the sounds they were making, only to find nothing at all while the Pegasus and humans slipped away to another spot. Skyrim. Their lips were a little sore from the kisses they had shared, but both considered it to be completely worth the effort. They filled in the time between kisses, swapping increasingly dirty jerks, and Rainbow had a pretty good idea by now what the human considered intimate, though she was sure a lot of it had slipped by her. She focused herself...
She found herself.
She found her... I will dump this water on you.
Oh.
It's that cold.
It is not that cold.
Anyway, she found herself feeling really thankful for some of the time she had spent around Rarity. The elegant mare...
Would you like me to increase this?
Oh, yes, that actually does. The elegant mare had a huge catalog of amazingly dirty humor, though Rainbow had no idea where she had picked it all up from, and the unicorn often found it hilarious to drive Dash to stammering embarrassment with her barrage of sex jokes. Rainbow had noticed a flush on the human's face as well as a tightness in his trousers. The trousers he wore. And she hoped that meant he was getting as aroused as she was, because between the intense kisses and the occasional accidental touch of his hands on sensitive spots on her back and shoulders, her wings were snapping to attention at the slightest contact. She couldn't tell if his arousal, if that's what it was constant or not. The clothes he wore made it hard to...
Oh,
Hi.
sorry. I didn't mean to distract you.
The clothes he wore made it kind of hard to spot, so she couldn't tell without staring. He wore those clothes all the time, too. And how weird was that? It wasn't even because he was cold or anything. She'd asked, and he'd said the humans were relatively comfortable, even without their clothes, down to temperatures that an earth pony or unicorn would consider downright chilly. They were just really body shy for some insane reason. Her tongue was feeling a little raw from where she kept running it over his sharp teeth, but she couldn't help herself. All the sensations and combinations of things she experienced, and those she didn't, were turning her on so hard. She wasn't sure she'd be able to fly up to her house tonight, which might prove to be a problem. Despite his apparent arousal, he hadn't been putting out any of the physical signs that suggested a stallion was ready for serious intimacy, and a well-raised mare never pushed a stallion further than he was ready to go. If she'd spent the last couple of hours with any other pony who had moved my page and made me lose my spot where I was reading,
Sorry.
who'd been acting this way, she'd be going to bed with a major case of the stiffies, and probably grumbling to her friends the next day about what a horrible wing tease last night's date had been.
Are you reading in monotone for a reason?
Yes. Wing boner. On the other hoof, though Lyra wasn't a pony, he sure hadn't been around ponies very long, and she knew his body language wasn't quite what she was used to. Until she'd goofed up earlier and impulsively kissed him before thinking about it, she had no real solid hints that he'd liked her as anything other than a friend, though she'd hoped he might someday want to be more. It was why she'd never tried to start a courtship with him, even though she wanted to for months now. She'd certainly never realized he actually found her attractive. The thought made her heart skip again. No pony had ever found her attractive before. Actually, that wasn't quite true. Silver Lining had certainly seemed eager enough. The one time Rainbow had tried a romantic liaison with another filly, and there had been those who'd thought Gilda had a bit of a thing for her, but Dash doubted it. She and Gilda had been great friends once upon a time, but the Griffin had never even hinted she was romantically interested in the multicolored Pegasus, which was probably a good thing. Dash had never felt any particularly attraction for other females anyway, despite that one effort. She was attracted to her human friend, though, intensely so, and it was the first time she had been attracted to had reciproc...
It was the first time someone she'd been attracted to.
Oh,
missed to someone.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I noticed you were confused, so I helped you out. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to correct you, I just noticed you were confused.
I know,
so
I'm being stupid.
Read. Please. Thank you. This is torture for her, so that's why I want her to read this.
Just a minute, you like hearing me read.
Mm-hmm. It's your turn.
Don't do that.
Tickle, tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle, tickle.
Stop it.
Read it.
No. Not if you keep tickling me.
I won't tickle you if you keep reading.
Okay. God. Had reciprocated the feeling. She entertained more than a few idle fantasies in the few months since she and Lyra had become friends, and she'd had some really vivid ones running through her head the last few hours. She didn't want to push him, but at the same time she was getting really, really heated. Sitting on the comfortable couch in Lyra's living room, she mulled over it as she went back to the small kitchen to get them both something to drink. He came back carrying 2 glasses filled with a light brown liquid she recognized. He brewed a really nice blend of iced tea that had just a slight hint of mint to it. Rainbow loved the flavor, and he knew that she did. She grinned as he passed her the glass that had a straw thoughtfully stuck into it. My nose itches. And settled onto the couch next to her, one arm around her body holding her close. Here you go. Well, that's you.
Here you go, Dash. Don't know about you, but I'm pretty thirsty.
Oh, yeah, me too. Thanks. She sipped the tea. Delicious. She'd always...
Delicious.
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 Here.
It's delectable. Oh, God. I actually drooled. She always thought he made stuff better than any of the town's ponies who tried to imitate it, and he knew exactly how much sugar she liked in it. It was refreshing, too, since they'd worked each other up to a sweat quite a few times, and she'd been feeling a bit dehydrated. Lyra raised his glass.
Beer, 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 tiddly beer, 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 tiddly beer, 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 tiddly beer, beer, beer. A long time ago, way back in history, when all there was to drink was nothing but cups of tea, along came a man by the name of Charlie Hops, and he invented a wonderful drink and he made it out of... Hops?
Hops.
Yeah, hops. Ah, whatever. Back to the reading.
It's your line.
To the... Oh, God. I forgot this line. To the prettiest Pegasus in Ponyville.
She flushed, ducking her head, knowing that he was just being nice. She knew he thought she was attractive. He'd certainly spent enough time proving that today. But even so, he couldn't think she was she couldn't think he was
Prettiest.
prettiest. She knew Fluttershy, at the very least, was much better looking. Still, it was a nice gesture, and it emboldened her.
Bravened, or it encouraged her.
Thank you. She tapped her glass against his, shyly, holding the bottom of the glass with the base of her hoof, and sipped again as he did. Her courage thus bolstered, and she pushed her nervousness aside and took a deep breath, placed her glass on a nearby table, and took the plunge. So, do you, want to keep going? Smooth, Rainbow. You're the charmer. You charmer, you. No idea why you've got no luck with the cults.
Keep going, like we've been doing?
The human thought he knew what she meant, but he wasn't 100% sure.
God, I'm horny right now, though.
Yeah, like we have been, but, more? She hated that slight stammer. Oh, more? She hated that slight stammer. It made her sound as nervous as she was. She was blushing furiously, her rainbow-striped tail twitching against the couch. She wasn't sure if he knew what that meant or not.
The couch.
The couch.
The couch.
The couch.
The couch.
Couch.
The couch.
As it happened, he was relatively certain he did know. A mare's tail twitching to the side like that had informed the basis of about a quarter of the dirty jokes she'd told him, so he felt reasonably confident assuming that she was at least horny as he was. Still, he'd always thought of himself as a gentleman, and he didn't want to pursue her.
Pressure
her. Assumptions, especially assumptions about alien creatures, would be a great way to torpedo a relationship he had come to realize was quite important to him.
More?
Yeah, more. You know. She made an extremely vague gesture with her Don't slap the back of my head.
Slap, 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 slap. Stop rating like a robot!
But I am a robot.
You are not a robot.
It is in my programming.
Robots cannot know love.
Transformers can, they're robots.
They're not robots.
They're robots in disguise. Do 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 do.
Ouch.
Go back up, I'm not done yet. You made me miss my place. No, I was up.
No.
No, I was here, wasn't I?
Yes, you were.
She made an extremely vague gesture with her forehoof and flipped her wings, cheeks burning so much she was surprised her fur hadn't caught fire. More, if you don't want to, it's totally cool, though. I'm completely fine with it. Don't want to push you or anything. The human was now 99% sure that Rainbow Dash was talking about actual intercourse. Wow, chicka, wow, wow. If someone had suggested sex with a non-human to him this morning, he'd likely have thought they were joking. Now, though, he was a good bit more tempted. He ran his eyes along Rainbow's muscular body, admiring her form. She checked him out in a similar fashion several times this afternoon, and based off her behavior, she liked what she saw. I can't do that voice for long. I know. Plus, that blush she was sporting right now was cute as hell, and he'd never seen her actually this shy. He wanted to bring the confident Dash back to the four, back to the four, and he honestly really wanted her right now. But he needed to be absolutely certain he didn't want to risk his relationship with the Cyan Pegasus, even on a tiny uncertainty.
Dash, I gotta ask. Because I feel like we're walking on a minefield here. Are we talking about sex? Mating?
She shot him an annoyed look. Well, duh. Yeah. I don't know how much clearer I can be without just saying, hey, get busy and ruffle my feathers. Or something. Her flick...
Ruffle my feathers. Come on. Come ruffle my feathers, Sam.
You can ruffle my feathers, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
Her flare of annoyance instantly faded to worry for half a second before he snorted a laugh. Okay. Wow, that's you.
Okay, I needed to be totally sure.
She shook a hoof at him, mock threateningly, the other resting on his leg and supporting her as she leaned up against his chest, and he held up a defensive hand, grinning.
Sorry, I just didn't want to risk, us on an assumption. You really make me happy, and I don't want a chance losing that.
Softy. She poked him playfully with her hoof, feeling a sense of heat spreading through her chest and groin. So, is that a yes? Are you interested?
Oh, very much so.
He gave her a shy grin that made her tail twitch harder.
So, tell me, what kind of things do you like?
Dash was confused. Like? What do you mean? He gave her an odd look.
What do you like? What makes you feel good? What do you want me to do?
Do? She said she didn't quite get it. It's the first time with a new guy. Isn't it supposed to be just for a couple... That's so funny.
Because it's on for a couple of seconds.
For a couple of minutes to keep you interested and get you to come back the next time. Second time's supposed to be better, but a mare's supposed to keep her stallion happy, so he sticks around. Lyra stared at her like she'd spouted another head. She spouted another forehead. She spouted another head for a few seconds, and she fidgeted uneasily, thinking she had said the wrong thing. Finally, he said,
I think I finally figured out why we've been dancing around each other like this. I think our culture's courtship rituals are reversed.
Huh?
Okay, look. When a human courtship starts, the male is supposed to approach the female and find out if she'd be interested in, spending time romantically with him. If she says yes, he generally treats her to dinner a few times, flatters her, and should the relationship go well, they might actually end up in bed together eventually. If they do, and if he's smart, he makes sure that she enjoys the experience as much as possible, so she might be interested in doing it again.
Rainbow listened, eyes wide. What? But that's totally backwards. A mare's supposed to talk to the stallion first, and get his attention, then flatter him and maybe give him some gifts. And the first time they mate, it's supposed to keep him interested. She put the pieces together in her head. She'd been looking to see if he was interested, and he'd been looking to see if she was interested. She laughed suddenly. Ha! I finally get it. Really? Really?
What?
You think this would have come up in conversation at some point?
No, of course not.
No, of course not.
Of course not. It wouldn't be interesting. It wouldn't. I mean, come on.
No, there wouldn't be a 11-chapter story.
It would have just been, and they fucked.
They beat around the bush for like 20 chapters, and then
then
Twilight
they fuck.
Sparkle's like, "Oh my God, Rainbow Dash, I have a secret to tell you, I love you." And Rainbow Dash's like, "Oh my God, no way, I love you too." And then they fuck.
The end.
Yeah, makes sense to me. At least it's not like Transformers. They meet, they fuck, they meet, they fuck, they meet, they fuck. Problem.
They
More
fuck some
fucking.
more.
Oh, gosh. He grinned at her and nodded.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you might enjoy it more if we do this my way.
She cocked her head at him. "What you mean?" His free arm moved to embrace her, and she felt his fingers trail lightly down the fur of her back and right along her spine between her wings. She gasped, and her wings snapped out to the sides, exterior muscles tense and quivering.
I mean, I'm going to take my time. Make sure you have fun too.
Is there any more of a sexual way you could have said that?
I mean...
No, I don't mean say it again.
In an even more sexual way?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
don't do that.
Oh, why not? It's character.
Yes, it is. But these are ponies and humans having sex. Rainbow felt a fluttery feeling in her stomach. Oh, wow. Wow. Even her fantasies hadn't been quite like this. She laughed breathlessly. "Oh, I am so tempted not to even share you."
Share me?
He asked, leaning forward and raising a bit of breath into her ear.
What do you mean by that?
He nibbled lightly at the tip of the ear, barely hard enough to feel the sensation sending a delightful shiver down her body. You know, her breath was coming faster and catching in her throat as he ran his hands down her extended wings. The feeling was making it harder for her to talk. With the other mares. He pulled back a bit, brow furrowing. I know what it means. As he looked at her questioningly. God, my contacts are so freaking dry. Though he didn't stop lightly passing his hands down her wings, the feeling of the soft palm gliding along her feathers was amazing. She'd never felt anything quite like it.
What, you're okay with that?
She laughed again. "Sure, I'm not Rainbow's breath left her for a moment as his fingers moved to her shoulder, stroking and caressing. "Hold on a sec. There's something we should probably talk about before I forget." He knew. What?
And do you see why I like the story?
Yeah, this is actually quite good to get into. He nibbled her ear again, and she gently pushed him away, giggling. "Quit that for a second. I'm serious. I want to talk about this before I forget." He leaned back, loosening his embrace and shifting the arms to unwrap her body so he could continue to trail his fingertips lightly across her upper back.
Okay. I'll keep doing this, though, if you don't mind.
That's fine. Wow, did she ever not mind? Every touch sent silvery delight dancing through her body. It was kind of distracting, but she could focus past it. Those fingers of his were seriously the best thing ever. "I just want to make sure you knew. I'm kind of weird, you know, in a lot of ways, but I'm not one of those mares who wants to keep a stallion all to herself, like Mrs. Cake. I know Mr. Cake is no real prize, but still. I can feel what you're doing back there."
I'm just rubbing your back.
She fell silent for a moment, basking happily in the feeling of his fingers moving over the sensitive skin between her extended wings. If this was the way human males treated their partners, she half wished she'd been born a human. Nights like this would almost make up for the lack of wings. Except she didn't have to give up her wings, and she still got to enjoy it. This was the best day ever. Lyra's voice interrupted her blissful reverie, and she realized she'd gotten distracted.
You mean you're not monogamous?
Mono... She had to focus to reassemble her train of thought that had gotten seriously derailed and gone skidding off into pieces into a very happy place. How do you pronounce that word again?
Monogamous.
Monogamous. Do 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 do. Monogamous. Do 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 do. Monogamous. Do 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 do. Yeah, that's the term for those weirdos. Wait, no, that's not quite right. Monogamous. That's it. They don't really push it on the rest of us, though. Be a good way to end up with a lot of lonely mares. Oh, what's that? I don't even know what monogamous means.
Monogamous means that they don't share. Like polygamy is
I know what
multiple
polygamy
wives. Monogamy is the opposite of polygamy.
So multiple husbands?
No, monogamy is just one person each. One male, one female.
Yeah, I know.
Or one male and one male, or whatever. Polygamy is multiple. Monogamy is one on each side.
Well, poly.
Mono. One.
Mono.
Poly. Multiple.
I never got that either. Why can't it be molestia? I don't know. Anyway, Lyra's face took on a pensive look and his caresses changed slightly. Instead of light strokes, his fingers traced intricate patterns around her upper shoulders, remaining in constant contact and constant motion. Rainbow's eyes crossed as she tried to focus on his words.
Huh. I hadn't really thought about that, but I can kind of see it, at least with the population here. Never really occurred to me before, though. My home culture is monogamous.
Really? Everyone?
Yeah, pretty much. Polygamy is illegal.
She blinked at him incredulously, focusing on his words with some effort. Wow, that sucks. You must have a ton of filly foolers.
Whores.
They have a name for whores?
I guess.
So does this mean instead of calling people I hate a whore, I can just call them a filly fooler?
I guess.
Yes. Where you were from, she hesitated. She hesitated, her thoughts moving a bit slowly. I didn't mean to call you a weirdo. Lyra laughed, shaking his head to show he wasn't offended, and Dash reached out with the forehoof to stroke his chest. It didn't feel right for him to be doing all the work, though. He did seem to be enjoying her reactions. She wasn't really sure whether he might be sensitive, but she figured she could find out if she experimented. He gave her a warm smile, though she suspected what she was doing wouldn't be anywhere near as exciting for him as what he was doing for her. Human populations are actually very...
I was going to say, I think that's me.
Oh.
Human populations are actually very nearly 50-50. Half male, half female. My home nation does have a fair number who prefer their own gender, though, both male and female, but they aren't anywhere near a majority.
That's kind of weird, she mused, trying to figure out where to touch him. He'd said he didn't want to move too fast, so she should probably stay away from his groin. He was sitting up fairly straight, but her shoulders were leaning against his side, and her wings were pressing against his back, so she couldn't reach that. He was built like an earth pony. Anyway, and unlike Pegasi, earth ponies didn't have any particularly sensitive spots on their backs. In fact, they didn't have very many sensitive spots, period. She struggled to remember anything she'd heard about what they liked. There were many saucy jokes or other stories about earth ponies, there were a ton about Pegasi, and more than a few about unicorns. Maybe the ears? She couldn't really use a hoof on the ears, though they were too delicate. Lips and tongues were better, but the way they were sitting she couldn't reach without twisting uncomfortably. She settled on carefully stroking his face for now, which he seemed to appreciate.
I didn't even... I think that's you.
Oh. I don't even know what it'd be like to have that many stallions around. I think like 4 foals out of every 5 born are fillies. She tried to remember, half listened to the facts from back in her school days. The tasks were even more difficult now than they had been back in Cloudsdale. She never had to work through shivers of delight in class. Here in Ponyville, it's worse, though. Like 7 out of 8 mares to each stallion. 7 or 8 males to each stallion, maybe more. There's a lot of filly foolers in town, just 'cause it's...
Oh, wait, no, I forget. Filly foolers are lesbians.
Oh!
Not whores.
Darn it.
Darn it.
They need to have a word for that. Just 'cause it's not worth that kind of competition to fight. And fights you get from all the other mares who are after a stallion. Most guys settle down with 3 or 4 mares, and that leaves the rest either turn to another mare or just stay lonely. There's a few stallions that are into other guys too, so that just makes the numbers worse. Kinda sucks to be a mare who likes stallions here. He looked at her, a touch of sadness in his eyes.
You mentioned you'd been turned down a lot. Did you find yourself a lady friend then?
Rainbow shook her head. The old feeling of loneliness tried to rise, but to her delight she found that it drowned in the warm tide of happiness washing through her. Nah, tried it once, but it turns out I'm not into fillies. Been kinda lonely, well, up until today. She looked...
There we go.
I'm sorry, this story
There
is
we
just
go.
rousing
That's
cuteness.
what I was waiting for. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for one line that would just make you stop and go, oh. Because that happens to me like 20 fucking times.
I mean, really?
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh.
Keep reading.
Actually, will you take her over for a second? I really
Yeah.
gotta use the bathroom.
Well, I'm not gonna read with you not listening.
Well, then you talk to the microphone, and I'm going to...
Okay.
Ow! The door's closed!
Really?
Just ran into the door.
Wow, you're really getting into this, aren't you?
It was dark. I couldn't see.
My plan is working. She's getting into the reading. Yes, it works. It's working perfectly. Maybe we'll have the rest of this done within the next week. Oh, it's marvelous, isn't it? All right, and we're back.
Yes, we're back. Ish.
Oh, yes,
Thing.
ish.
Let me get situated. My back is starting to hurt.
I was gonna say, we can move the laptop, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna...
Just try not to hit the microphone. You were right, you were right here.
She looked up at him with tears of happiness filling her eyes again. Hey, Lero, thanks for today, by the way. You know, in case I forgot to say it. Her voice was husky.
Oh, heck, Dash, I've enjoyed it as much as you have. No need to thank me.
The hell was...
No, this is his thoughts.
Oh.
The hell was wrong with the men in this dimension anyway? Dimension, world, reality, universe, whatever the hell it was. Rainbow was tough, cheerful, fiercely loyal, and had a lively sense of humor. Even if they haven't found her physically appealing, which he thought that was kind of nuts, considering her sleek, muscular, not to mention those gorgeous rosy eyes, she had a hell of a personality. At least one of them really should have looked past the surface. Their loss, he thought, though he was far from happy that his friend had been neglected for so long. Besides, today's nowhere near done. We're just getting warmed up.
We're just getting warmed
We're just
up.
getting warmed up.
Oh, blades.
Oh, God.
I can see Heatwave saying that.
Keep reading.
Okay. The Pegasus grinned, still stroking Lero's cheek I like his name too. Lero's cheek with the forehoof. Hey, I'm really liking this human style stuff so far. When you say you're eep? Rainbow squeaked and twitched as the human snuck his free hand around and poked her lightly in the flight muscles right below her extended right wing, sending a sudden bolt of pleasure straight through her body. She laughed when she regained her breath. Ha! Whoa, sorry, you got me. When you say most humans are monogamous, does that mean, you are, He started lightly massaging the flight muscles he'd poked with his other hand, while his other hand continued to trace patterns on her back. Her head was swimming, her wings could have been used as diving boards, and her mind insisted to wander off topic. It had all sorts of other things it wanted to focus on right now. Does that mean you want to be?
I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest.
He kneaded her underwing muscles gently as he spoke, causing the Pegasus to start panting. After spending the entire afternoon in a low-grade state of rattle, that spot was so sensitive it was almost painful, but only almost.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm willing to leave that decision up to you. I think it's horribly unfair the way you've been so neglected. So, if you'd like to have a guy all to yourself, I'd be totally willing to go along with it. It'd be easy for me, in fact. On the other hand, if you'd prefer to share, I'd be okay with that too. Human monogamy is primarily a culture thing, not biological, and if that's the cultural norm here, I can change, though I'd probably be more comfortable with just you and me.
Huh? Me? Rainbow panted. Much as she didn't want to, she gently pushed his hand away from her wing. Hold on, stop a second. I need to be able to think. He stopped, sitting back, but he was starting to look a little impatient. She could totally understand. Her groin was starting to ache a little, but she really wanted to get things sorted out before they got into this really heavy stuff. Thanks. He smiled and leaned down to give her a quick kiss. Wow.
No problem, Dash. I said I wanted to make sure you enjoyed yourself, and I meant it, even if it means taking more breaks than I normally would.
It's not that. I want to take breaks. In fact, it's not that I want to take breaks. In fact, it's kind of frustrating. It's just...
The human interrupted. I understand. Don't worry.
She smiled in thanks. Okay, you really want me to decide if you stick with just one mare or not? He nodded. Rainbow Dash took a deep breath, thinking hard. She liked him. She really, really liked him. But she'd always harbored a deep dislike for mares that hogged their stallions. It meant there was less to go around, and she always thought it was horribly selfish. She thought at a time or two that it was bitterly unfair for some mares to keep one stallion to themselves, while she didn't even have one to share. Even so, the idea of having a guy that was just hers was pretty appealing. Selfish or no, if he was fine with it, shouldn't it be okay? The thought lingered for several moments before she finally dismissed it. Yeah, it'd be nice, but I don't really want to think of myself as being greedy. Besides, she knew of at least two other mares who were at least a little bit interested in him, one of which was a good friend of hers. Well, I don't think I should be the only one courting you then. Monogamous are monogamous.
Monogamous.
Are kind of weird. I was actually thinking earlier about trying to set you up with Lyra and maybe Pinky. but I know they both like you, too. His raised eyebrows, she hesitantly added, but if Pegasi are more your thing, I could probably find a couple on the weather patrol that might be interested. Blue Lightning, maybe. She's pretty nice. He held up a hand to quiet her.
I wasn't expressing this interest, Dashy. I was a little surprised and a little culture shocked. A human woman would never be offering to set her boyfriend up with another woman.
Really? How do you find... Oh, wait. You said you were mostly monogamous. She face-huffed. Aww. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But
You're
imagining
fine.
Rainbow Dash face-huffing is kind of adorable for me. I think any pony that face-huffs is adorable. Forgot. If a stallion isn't courting any pony else, it's usually good manners for the first mare who courts him to help set him up with some other unattached mares she knows. Makes the stallion happy, makes her friends happy, every pony's better off. Lyra shook his head.
You folks have some interesting customs. Well, regardless of who else I might date, you're always going to be my favorite, Dashy.
Her flush had been fading as they sat without continuing their foreplay, but it flared back up now. The statement was an odd one, but the kindness she sensed behind it was heartwarming.
You ready to keep going on with what we were doing? How am I doing so far compared to the other stallions you've been with?
Her flush deepened and she ducked her head slightly. You've already done a heck of a lot more than any other stallion I've ever gotten this far with.
What, only one?
Yeah. That wasn't a particularly nice memory. I courted him for like a couple of weeks, and we finally went back to my place and had really quick sex, like a minute and a half. It was... It was over, barely enough time for my wings to get stiff. She fanned her extended wings demonstratively. They relaxed a tiny bit, but not much. He dumped me the next day and said he wanted a mare with more jingle in her rump.
Jiggle.
Jiggle. What did I say? Jingle? What the hell?
Jingle, jangle.
Jiggle in her rump. We'd never even kissed. She hadn't told any pony about it at the time. She'd been so ashamed. She tried her experiment with Silver Lining a few days later, but to her frustration, that hadn't really gone anywhere, despite the other fillies' earnest attempts. The human was silent for several seconds. When Rainbow Dash looked up at him, his mouth was hanging open in shock.
That total bastard.
He said when he finally found his voice. I'm pretty sure he knew who both his parents were. That's actually quite amusing. Rainbow was a little confused by this seeming
Sequitur.
sequitur.
I'm pretty sure that means question.
Lyra waved her objection aside.
The word's an insult where I come from. It doesn't actually mean an illegitimate child in this context. It means a... Shut up.
The magic school bus is calling you?
The magic school bus is calling me. I'm not entirely sure how to define the negative connotation my culture puts on it. Suffice to say, it's not a compliment. He took a deep breath and stood. Rainbow, on behalf of all decent males, I'd like to extend to you an apology. Maybe I can make up for the shameful way he treated you. Would you like to follow me to the bedroom? Oh, sorry. Would you like to follow me to the bedroom?
Okay, that just kind of ruined it.
I'm sorry.
You should be. You're ruining the story for me.
Keep reading.
Why do I taste funnel cake?
I have no idea.
I miss funnel cake. He was a good dog.
How do you know what your dog tastes like?
Because I ate him. No. I never had a dog named Funnel Cake. That would be an interesting name for a dog, though. The fluttering in Dash's stomach got a lot stronger all of a sudden. He's really assertive for a guy. It was one of those things that made her so comfortable around him. It was good to know that he didn't just go along with stuff because she bullied him into it without meaning to. She swallowed nervously, but gave him a firm nod. Hopping off the couch, she trailed behind him as he walked back to his bedroom?
Yeah, his bedroom.
Oh, they're at his house, not her house. I was like, what are you doing in his bedroom? No, they're at her house. No, his house. Shooting several appreciative glances at his backside as she did. He really did have nice flanks. I love this story. I'd just like to say. I really do. I am enjoying this.
I'm glad you are enjoying this. Told you you'd like the second chapter.
I thought this would be more painful than it has been. How long have we been recording for, though?
It's 12:43 now, so that means it's been 45 minutes.
Oh, good. Oh, God. There's still a lot to go, isn't there?
We're about halfway through the page. Do you want me to read?
No, I'm good.
Alright.
She'd been back here a time or two before when he'd bought the place with the money he'd earned doing all kinds of odd jobs around town. With his hands made him really good at. He'd done a lot of work to raise the ceilings, and he'd built his own bed. It was a good bit larger than a pony bed, much longer to accommodate his upright posture, and wider as well. It would have been just barely big enough for two humans, but she figured there was a decent amount of room for the two of them. She had a fair number of ideal fantasies featuring that bed in the past, and now she had a chance to actually live some of them out. She found... I lost his place for a second. She found that she was really nervous. Leo sat on the edge of the bed, motioning for her to join him. She swallowed, just trying to hide her anxiety.
Yes, I'm finding this statement funny too. And she clopped quietly over. Clop, 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 clop. Well, this is technically a clopfic.
Technically.
The
thick rug on the floor was soft under her hooves, muffling her hoofbeats. She hopped easily up onto the bed, unable to fly as she normally would thanks to her current state of arousal, but the strong muscles in her legs made the jump effortless. She snuggled up to him again, one forehoof supporting her weight on the bed while the other rested on his leg. With one wing lying stiffly along his back, he put his arm around her body, as he had before, this time tucking his hand under her wing, where he had started to carefully massage the flight muscles again. The relaxation had crept into her wings as they... Oh.
If you don't remember...
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
Vanished, the tendons tightening as they stood out so stiffly they started to quiver. He leaned across, twisting his shoulders as his free hand pulled her into another long kiss. The hand on the back of her head gently rubbed at her ear, while the other continued to dig its fingertips lightly into her shoulder. Their tongues slid past each other, and she panted into his mouth as she slid her tongue along the canines again. The fingers under her wings were intensely arousing. Their soft surfaces were unlike a hoof. Their flexing made it feel almost like she was being licked. Silver Lining had done that when they were experimenting, kissing and licking under Rainbow's wings to try and get the multicolored Pegasus excited. It had almost worked then, but Dash hadn't been able to muster any serious enthusiasm for another mare. Now, though, it was working, and then some.
Right here. I highlighted it for you.
The human's fingers were flexible, but much stronger than Silver Lining's tongue had been, and there were 5 of them. Bright Celestia. It felt good, too. and the feeling of his tongue sliding along the underside of hers, too. Woo! By the time the kiss ended, Rainbow's whole body was trembling. She wondered what else he had planned. Surely he was almost done with the foreplay. Light pressure from his hand at the back of her neck prompted her to lean her head forward a bit, so he could whisper in her ear.
So, I asked you earlier if there's anything in particular you wanted to do.
He breathed into her ear, shifting around to her face, her squarely, and sliding his hand down the back of her neck.
Thought of anything yet?
He kissed her just behind the ear and then lightly bit the skin. He just kissed. Just lightly enough that it didn't hurt. It was surprising how good that felt. Her eyes crossed and her body trembled harder. And he moved a few inches down her neck and repeated the gesture. Exhale into her fur right at the edge of her mane. Kiss, bite. He worked his way down her neck that way, waiting for her answer. Past green, past blue. She was still trying to put words together in her scrambled brain as he passed the final purple band of her mane without breaking his pace. She realized he wasn't stopping there, and oh my gosh! Oh, that's funny. Her mouth had found the his mouth. Nope, Lear's grown up.
Okay.
His mouth had found the soft, thin skin of her upper junction of her wings, and he did the same thing. Breathe, kiss, nip. Her fur actually it was nip kiss. They got it wrong. Her forelegs gave out, and she would have fallen on her face if he hadn't been right there. Her head collapsed onto his back, her chest resting against his shoulders, and her back legs tried to buck, but they were stretched out straight on the bed where she was sitting, so they just shot out, knees locked. Her body was trembling violently, and her breath was coming in fast. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Sorry.
No, you can.
Oh.
Snuggle me. Just don't play with that part of my neck.
Sorry.
The thought of answering his question had gone completely out of her head, and she felt an urgent sensation, almost a pressure between her hind legs. Oh, that's you. She heard him hum, feeling the vibrations of his voice where her chin rested on his back.
Looks like you like that.
He repeated what he had just done, still massaging under her wings. He exhaled onto the tuft of fur directly between her upper shoulders, then kissed it, leading with his tongue. A building sense of anticipation rose in her belly, and he released the kiss, nipping at the exquisitely sensitive skin, made more so by the light stimulation he just applied with his lips and tongue. The silvery bolt of pleasure that had caused... God, it's gonna take forever. Silvery bolt of pleasure that had caused... triggered a cascade of sensation throughout her body. Her wings shivered, the flight muscles tensing as they clamped down again, his hand and back, as her body against his hand and back as her body shuddered. Her tail lashed out against the bed, rainbow-striped hair flashing on the bedspread, and the breath went out of her several deep, unsteady exhalations as points of intense pleasure exploded in her shoulders, belly, and groin. She couldn't think, she couldn't even see for several seconds, as waves washed over her. Sorry. The feeling finally regretfully abated, and she regained control of her muscles. Her wings relaxed a bit, and they were still pretty stiff, but she was able to raise herself on her forelegs again, putting her weight back on her hooves off the human shoulders. He sat back upright, fingers that had been rubbing her flight muscles trailed down her shoulders and ribs, leaving a delightfully shivery sensation behind. She panted a bit, and her heart slowed down to something approaching normal pace, looking a little bit down to meet his eyes, as was normal when they sat together like this. Unlike Rainbow, Lyra was a lot shorter when sitting down, and in this posture she was just a tiny bit taller than him. Finally, she was able to catch her breath and regain control of her vocal cords to speak. Whoa. She had orgasm before, certainly. She triggered nearly all of them herself alone in her bed, alleviating some of the pent-up frustration that had continued to build with no release. The rest had been a result of dreams of her 2 previous sexual encounters. The first had been far too brief to cause one, and she hadn't been able to get sufficiently excited during the second. This was the first time she'd had an orgasm triggered by someone else, and it had been way, way more intense than she'd ever had before. A satiated grin spread over her face. That was awesome. Awesome doesn't even cover it. He returned her grin.
So, you enjoyed it then?
He added a hammy wiggle of his eyebrows. She giggled at the goofy expression, mirth resonating with the afterglow still echoing through her. The giggle built to a full belly laugh, and even the laugh felt amazingly good. Her laughter finally trailed off into a 30 tickle. She took a deep breath, fanning her wings to speed their relaxation. Well, what did you want to do now? She asked. Lyra shrugged. You ready for round 2?
That's me reading.
Whoops.
Thank you. You ready for round 2?
Round 2? Her eyes got huge. You mean we can keep going?
Sure, if you want to. Based on some of the jokes you told earlier, it sounded like you mares can have multiple orgasms, and I'm still good to go if you are.
The fire in her belly that had guttered down started to rekindle. Really?
Heck yeah. That time I was only playing with your front. I didn't even get down past your shoulders, so there's plenty left I can play with.
He playfully slapped her on the rump, grinning, and her wings started to stiffen up again where they had been starting to relax. She answered his grin with her own. She knew her rump didn't have the bounce most mares had, but he seemed to enjoy it all the same, his hand rubbing the fur muscle under her cutie mark.
Okay. No, that's you.
Okay, there's gonna be something different this time, though. Rash.
Rainbow rash.
Oh, God.
Ow, it hurts. It spreads so fast.
Like an STD. That's not funny.
Yes, it is.
Dash poked the humans in the chest with her forehead. You're gonna take off those clothes. I kind of feel bad that you did all the work and I had all the fun, so this time it's gonna be more even.
You sure?
This was the first time she'd heard a clear nervousness in his voice since they'd gotten to his house. She sighed and, face huffed. There went that weird nudity taboo, tampon, taboo is again. Every pony in town thought it was really strange. It wasn't even like she'd never seen him nude anyway. What? Because she had. Twice. The first time when she'd been looking for him and accidentally walked in on him in the shower, and the second time when his clothes had gotten doused in that flaming what?
Acid, and he had to strip really fast. That'd have been really funny, though if he'd actually gotten hurt it wouldn't have been, and it wasn't like that. It was entirely her fault anyway.
As far as she knew, she was the only pony in town who'd ever seen him naked, though she suspected Rarity might have insisted on taking his measurements with his clothes off. It wasn't quite as he wasn't quite as hairless as he looked when you could only see his face and his arms. There was a fair amount of it on his chest and belly, and quite a bit on his groin and upper legs. It was curiously patchy, but he hadn't said that.
But he'd said that
was normal for humans. Males, anyway. He said females usually had a really thin body hair in comparison. Yeah, I'm sure. She raised her head and cocked an eyebrow at him. What are you planning on mating with your pants on? That'd be a trick. Right. Blushing a bit, Lyra... I can read it.
No, I'm taking over. No, I'm kidding.
Fine, you take over then.
I'm not serious.
Nope,
no,
you already did it.
No. I did not. I said right, because that was my line. Right.
Are you done?
Yeah.
You gonna interrupt me?
Yes.
Probably. Blushing a bit, Lyra quickly stripped out of his clothing. Rainbow Dash watched as he did so. It was a surprisingly quick process, considering it was kind of enveloping clothes he wore. Finally, he was as nude as she was, to her approval. Lack of hair aside,
Nope.
He really did have nice flanks, and they were a lot easier to see without his pants on in the way. She further noted that his penis was not fully erect. While not fully erect, was much larger than it had been the other times she had seen it, which was interesting. He hadn't been aroused before when she'd seen him nude, and while Stallion's members grew about 2 to 3 times as long as normal when he was ready to mate, it was clear that humans had much higher levels of expansion, at least a factor of 3 by its current state. It looked like it had gotten wider, too. That was probably a good thing. She'd be worried if it wouldn't be big enough to fit right when they got around to actually mating. But that concern was fading. Okay, what now? She patted the bed next to her with the forehoof, and he obediently came over and sat down next to her. She grinned at him for a moment, eyelids lowered, enjoying the continued nervous look and the slightly musky scent of his sweat. She gathered herself in a crouch. "Ready, set, go!" she yelled, and pounced on him. He looked really startled for a second before comprehension dawned. Rainbow loved play wrestling matches. She launched... I can't read this anymore.
She launched into them without any excuse at all, testing her strength and agility directly against someone else. She didn't like to be a bully, though, and so she tried to limit herself to matches against those who had been a decent chance of beating her. There were precious few of those, though. Applejack, Big Macintosh, and a couple of the other Earth ponies in town were really the only ones she'd be able to wrestle in their last couple of years. None of the local Pegasi stood a chance, and the unicorns mostly didn't either, and unicorns cheated anyway. She tried it once against Twilight just to see what would happen, but the Pegasus had found herself pinned in a telekinetic field with embarrassing ease and hadn't repeated the stunt. She'd been delighted to find another worthy opponent when Lero found himself in Ponyville. She was still considerably stronger than he was, but his arms and hands gave him a heck of a lot of reach and leverage. She'd picked up a couple of tricks in their last few matches. This match, however, was a whole new kind of fun. Laughing, they tussled, rolling and sliding past each other. Lyra was being very careful not to twist Dash's extended wings. For her part, Rainbow enjoyed this feeling of his smooth skin sliding over her fur. His member, fully erect now, poked her in the tail a few times, which added to the arousal the match was kindling. Finally, the human was able to take advantage of the way her stiff wings limited her mobility and pinned her on the bed on her back. He looked at her with a wicked gleam in his eye, and she wondered what he was planning for a split second before he started tickling her.
Rainbow burst out in squeals of delight and delighted laughter, making a half-hearted effort to fend him off. Her belly was pretty ticklish, and he'd done this a few times when he'd won a match. This time, with the afterglow of her early orgasm and her present level of arousal, the mirth and sensation of the tickling combined into a surprisingly strong feeling of lust, and she grabbed him around the neck with her forelegs, pulling him close so she could kiss him. Lyra returned the kiss voraciously, stroking her belly with one hand and her wings with the other. When the kiss ended, she gave him a sultry look and said, "Well, looks like you won. What you gonna do now?" In answer, he grinned and slowly slid his hands down her belly. Her breath caught as he lightly tweaked a nipple between his fingers before continuing on down between her hind legs. He moved his other hand to continue tickling her belly and propped himself up on an elbow. She let out several panting giggles as his hand settled lower between her hind legs. Her eyes unfocused as his soft fingers sliding along the tip of her vulva, stroking teasingly through the moisture that had already gathered there. Oh, I don't want to read further.
He kept tickling her belly, too. The combination of laughter and the sensations between her legs was driving her to an even higher peak than she'd been to before, and she wondered how much longer it could last. She pulled his head close again, kissing him roughly while she giggled.
I have a question.
Yes.
How come when I say I can't read this any longer, you just kind of,
Take over?
yeah.
Because I'm giving you a break.
Oh, well, no, I'm just joking. I don't actually need a break. I'm fine.
Kissing him roughly while she giggled, and as her tongue slid into his mouth, his fingers slid into her.
Getting steamy.
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh, God. I'm glad this is almost over. She shuddered in ecstasy, feeling his fingers stroking inside her, now added to that of his tongue sliding along hers, and his breath in her mouth. It was still tickling her, and he was still tickling her, and she didn't know how much longer she'd be able to hold out. She broke the kiss and whispered in his ear, panting, "Come on, rest of the way."
You sure?
She giggled again, nodding vigorously, her sunset-colored forelocks bouncing on her head. Never sure. Sure?
Never sure.
Lyra nodded back and shifted position. To her slight disappointment, his fingers slid out as he positioned himself belly to belly atop her, supporting his weight on his elbows and allowing both hands to massage her upper shoulders without putting his weight on her stiff wings. The position was a touch kinky, but some ponies liked it, and a second thought made her suspect it was normal for humans. The way his fingers were stroking right under her wings blew her slight reservations completely away. Heck, the fact that he was a different species was a kink already enough. Anyway, she felt a slight poke where his fingers had just left, and wrapping her hind legs around his flanks, she pulled him closer, shuddering again as she felt him enter her. Her earlier concerns about his size were forgotten. It was quite big enough to fit comfortably. A bit smaller than an average stallion, true, but then she was rather small back there, too. Oh, it felt wonderful, the sensations of his penis sliding into her.
Stop it.
What?
Stop being all robot voice.
It was unbelievably amazing. It was unbelievably amazing. And she couldn't suppress a quiet moan of delight. He ducked his head to kiss her, but she preempted him, nuzzling and kissing at his throat, which made him catch his breath for once. Ha! Finally found a place he likes. She stroked her forehoof against his ribs, continuing to nuzzle at his neck, while he gently slid back and forth, lightly rubbing her flight muscles, and she could feel her pleasure mounting higher and higher as his member gently pushed in and out of the pages, going crazy. Lightly pushing in and out, quivering slightly every time he rubbed against a particular spot inside her. That felt amazing. I know. I'm taking a slight
Would you like me?
No, I'm wondering.
You're wondering.
I'm wondering
What are
how
you
much
wondering?
more. Oh my God, we're almost done. Thank God. It lasted for a surprisingly long time before she finally peeked. Rainbow shuddered again underneath her human friend, her wings clamping tightly down against his hands and ribs as her hind legs locked and her tail lashed out against the side of his thighs. She was lost in the moment for several long seconds before coming back to her senses. He wasn't quite done, so she figured she'd just let him finish, and was shocked when the pleasurable sensations only backed down a tiny bit before shooting back up and peaking again. The last several seconds longer this time, and it was with some anticipation that she returned to herself to find he hadn't finished yet. Sure enough, Dashes climaxed on the third time, feeling him follow suit, while she was shuddering in
His grip. Well, it's supposed to be his.
in his grip. His sudden tension and the warming feeling inside her telling her he'd hit his own. Spent and exhausted, both breathing hard, soaked in sweat, they finally rolled apart on the bed. Rainbow turned her head to look at Lero as her wings finally relaxed, leaving a light, pleasant soreness behind. Hey, his face turned to hers. That was, I don't even know the words for that. She stretched luxuriously, wings fanning out against the bedspread, her feathers brushing his chest while all four hooves reached for the ceiling. Thanks.
Glad you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Lero grinned tiredly.
Did you want to spend the night here?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think I'm a little too worn out to fly right now.
Sure thing.
She scooched closer, laying her head on his chest. She slowly fell asleep, listening to the cessation of his breath and the quiet thump of his heartbeat.
And we're done with chapter 2.
Oh, these chapters are so long.
Are you complaining?
No, there were a couple of parts that I don't want to, but really, pony, human having sex. I mean, this one wasn't bad compared to
You need to stop hitting the microphone.
I do need to stop hitting the microphone. This one wasn't bad compared to the Twy and Me one.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that. This one felt a little more, like they're truly in love. Twy and Me just felt like porn.
It was PWP.
I know. I love PWP.
Porn without
but
plot.
not pony human PWP.
Only
Give me
Transformer
Transformers.
PWP.
Well, I won't say it out loud. I'll only say it into the microphone. But I do, to a certain level, like Transformer human PWP.
Oh, that's awkward. Oh.
Is that awkward when the person writing actually makes it make legitimate? Will you stop licking me?
No.
It tickles. Stop it. So when it makes legitimate sense, then PWP with human Transformers is fine. Sam, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
I heard what you said there.
I didn't say that.
You said Sam from the movie and Bumblebee.
I said Sam McWiki and Bumblebee.
Oh, whatever.
And I've only read like 2 good fanfics I would consider like partially.
Like that category?
Yeah. That would fall into
Okay.
my I like the story.
So...
But as far as this chapter goes, they took their time with it. I kind of respect how they're taking the relationship and seeing the 2 different cultures, how they go about courting, is also a very interesting thing that, I hadn't really thought about before you started telling me about this story. And, it might be that way in Ponyville. We don't know.
It would explain why Princess Celestia has all those male bodyguards. Are you gonna not fall off the bed?
No, I'm going to fall off the bed because I don't want to read anymore.
Well, we're done, so you don't have to.
Alright. I'm secondary character.
I'm Axelsims.
And we will see you next time
And
on
my
another...
plan is finally working. She's starting to enjoy it.
We will see you on the next episode of
Fanfiction or Xenophilia or
or
whatever the fuck I
we
record.
feel like reading
Exactly.
or doing.
Or doing.
Chair mode activate.
Boop boop.